Shocking images out of Istanbul, Turkey. A clock tower thundering to the ground, nearly hitting a driver who was nearby after a powerful storm pounded the city of 15 million people. The winds blowing away at least 33 roofs, uprooting at least 192 trees. At least 4 people were killed and roughly 20 people injured. Tonight, anxiety over the Omicron variant grows, but President Biden says the new variant is cause for concern, not a cause for panic. What do we know about the variant? How transmissible is it? Do we know how dangerous it is? And what's the #1 thing you can do right now to protect yourself against that and other variants? Dr. Richard Besser standing by to answer many of your questions tonight. Opening arguments today in the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's friend and alleged accomplice in sex trafficking. Alleged victims ready to testify. Maxwell already behind bars for more than 500 days. Will she take the stand? Our new reporting from inside Belarus, that manufactured migrant crisis and the ripple effects it's having across the continent, and the migrants caught in the crosshairs, just hoping for a better tomorrow, but now stuck in limbo and facing an uncertain future.
So this is where people are living, and it's a packing warehouse. You can see people are just living in the spaces where normally you would store goods.
What comes next, and who's to blame? Tonight, the clock is ticking to take advantage of the massive Cyber Monday sales. Today is expected to be the biggest online shopping day of the year. Customers expected to spend more than $10 billion today alone amid inflation and supply chain issues. Rebecca Jarvis has the biggest deals happening right now. Climbing the world's 14 tallest mountains in just a matter of months. While not impossible, it was seen as crazy to some until it was accomplished. Our inside look at a breathtaking achievement. Now a brand new documentary out today. Nothing is impossible. 14 peaks. In the past, it had been 7 years it had taken for people to ascend the 14 highest peaks. You decide, I'm going to do it in 7 months. Where did you come up with that idea? Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. A cause for concern, not a cause for panic. Those were the words of President Biden today on the Omicron variant, which was likely a topic of conversation at holiday gatherings this weekend. Tonight, we want to get you the most up-to-date, accurate information about Omicron. It was first identified in Botswana and announced by the WHO on Friday. One reason it has quickly concerned doctors is the sheer number of genetic mutations that it has. And we've quickly seen confirmed cases beyond Africa. But tonight there's so much that we still don't know about the variant, including if those mutations make this virus more dangerous or less dangerous, and if it's more transmissible. What we do know tonight is here in America, hundreds of people are dying every day in hospitals. The past week, the average number of daily deaths hovering around 960, the large majority of those unvaccinated. Doctors and officials say the variant is just another reminder of the importance of vaccination and booster shots, and an increased number of Americans did rush out today to get a shot. Dr. Richard Besser is standing by to answer your questions, but first, our Stephanie Ramos leads us off tonight from New York.
Just hours after the World Health Organization warned the global risks from the Omicron variant are very high, President Biden with Dr. Anthony Fauci at the White House, aiming to reassure the American people and to urge them to get vaccinated and get the booster.
This variant is a cause for concern, not a cause for panic.
Scientists are now racing to learn whether the Omicron variant, with its 50 mutations, is more transmissible than the Delta variant, whether it can make people sicker, and whether our vaccines and booster shots will prevent severe illness. The Omicron variant was first identified in Botswana and is spreading rapidly in South Africa. About 200 cases have been confirmed in at least 17 countries, including 2 cases in Canada. Dr. Fauci suggesting the variant could already be here, something the president acknowledged today.
Sooner or later, we're going to see cases of this new variant here in the United States.
Dr. Fauci says he expected our vaccines and the boosters to be effective in knocking down the severity of this new variant, though he cautioned it's still early.
We don't know exactly what's going on with this variant, but I would assume, and I think it's a reasonable assumption, that when you get vaccinated and boosted and your level goes way up, you're going to have some degree of protection, at least against severe disease.
This morning, the final flight from Johannesburg, South Africa, touching down in Newark, ahead of the new U.S. ban on foreign travelers from 8 South African countries.
I think it's better to be safer than sorry to restrict the travel until we know for sure.
Tonight, Portugal confirming 13 cases of the Omicron strain in one soccer team after one player traveled to South Africa. The Kennedy family from North Carolina were on a safari in South Africa. They're now making their way home, but the ban does not affect U.S. citizens.
I understand that there's a more global and bigger picture than my little nuclear family. But I'd like to get home and quarantine at home.
Genomic sequencing labs are now racing to find cases of Omicron here in the U.S. The president says all 3 vaccine makers are preparing to update their vaccines if needed.
In the event, hopefully unlikely, that updated vaccinations or boosters are needed to respond to this new variant, we will accelerate their development and deployment with every available tool.
Moderna telling us it would take a couple of months.
We'll know from laboratory tests in the next couple of weeks just how effective the vaccines are against this variant.
The potential threat from Omicron comes as the U.S. is already seeing a spike with the colder weather and now the busiest travel weekend of the pandemic. Hospital admissions have climbed more than 20% since the beginning of the month.
Our isolation unit for people with COVID-19 here in the hospital every day gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We're adding more and more rooms. So we're going the wrong way with the variant we know now.
Facing a spike in COVID cases already, New York's Governor Kathy Hochul declaring a state of emergency to make sure the state and New York City are ready for any impact from the new variant. And the governor ordering all nursing homes to make booster shots available.
We have to deal in the realities of a highly transmissible, we believe, variant.
President Biden urging Americans to wear masks indoors when out in public again to keep yourself safe and those around you. Tonight, New York City doing the same.
Recommendations once again to mask up in public. Stephanie Ramos joins us now. Stephanie, I know the CDC is doubling down on Americans 18 and older, urging them to get a booster shot as soon as possible. What about 16 and 17-year-olds?
Well, Lindsay, sources familiar with the discussions tells ABC News that Pfizer is going to ask the FDA in the coming days to authorize boosters for 16 and 17-year-olds. Now, Pfizer's vaccine was authorized for adolescents back in May, so many teenagers are already about 6 months out from their second shot. Lindsay.
Stephanie Ramos, our thanks to you. Joining us now to help answer some of your questions about the Omicron variant is Dr. Richard Besser, the CEO of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and former acting director of the CDC. Thank you, as always, for your time, Dr. B. There's been so much concern over this variant, and while in many cases it's never too early to get ready, to start, can you just please walk our viewers through why exactly it's too early to know definitively just how dangerous or even not dangerous this variant might be?
Right. Well, you know, Lindsay, this is a situation of incredible uncertainty. And one of the things that I think gives me a lot of hope about the global picture is how quickly the scientists in South Africa identified this strain and alerted the global community. But with that rapid announcement, it means that there's more that we don't know about this strain than we do. What they're concerned about is that there are enough mutations in this strain. It's different enough from the Delta variant, and it appears that it's spreading easily in South Africa. The question is still out there. Does it spread easier than the Delta strain? Will it take over in places where the Delta strain is spreading? Is it more serious? Will people who've been vaccinated against COVID so far, will they be protected? These are things that aren't known currently. Some of the signals out of South Africa are encouraging in terms of the severity, but it's still not known, and it's going to be days and weeks before we have information on that. And because of that, we're seeing actions being taken around the globe to ensure that if this is something that is going to cause a lot more problems, countries are ready and have taken appropriate action.
And medically right now, is the best thing that Americans can do while we wait for more information get the vaccine or get a booster shot? Should we be concerned about the holidays?
Yeah, I think that, whether or not Omicron turns out to be more or less severe, this is really a time to get your questions answered. And if you can, get vaccinated. If you've been fully vaccinated, and it's been 6 months since you've had the Pfizer Moderna shot, it is time to get the booster. The CDC director made that announcement. All adults, anyone 18 or older, should get that booster. If you got the J&J vaccine, and it's been 2 months since your dose, you should get a booster. That could help raise your levels of protection. And it's also a time to don't forget those things that we know work. So wearing masks, especially indoors in places where there's significant transmission, which is most of the country. Making sure that you're paying attention to ventilation, so opening windows. If you're gathering with people and not everyone's vaccinated, making sure that those who aren't vaccinated and everyone who's coming together is getting tested. Those things can help as well. It's not a time to say, wow, this is a major setback, but it's a time to double down, especially in the winter when viruses do so much better with transmission.
And I should also point out that while Americans are lining up for boosters, much of the world is still waiting for their first dose of the vaccine. We've talked to you before about vaccine equity repeatedly over the past year. Do variants like the Omicron highlight just how critical vaccinating the entire world is, that global community?
Well, it's critical for a couple of reasons. One is that everyone in any country should have the opportunity to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. And right now, it's really something where wealthy nations have cornered the market on vaccines. The other reason is purely out of national self-interest, that while this virus is spreading rapidly around the globe, new variants will arise, as we're seeing now with Omicron. And whether or not Omicron turns out to be one that causes a lot of problems, the next one could. And so it's very important. The U.S. has been doing a lot to try and increase vaccine supply, but globally there has to be more efforts to get vaccines to everyone around the globe.
And of course, boosters do offer Americans additional protection. But in your estimation, do you think that they should be going to other countries instead?
Well, that's a good question. I think that if I were in charge of full vaccine distribution and could send them, I would make sure that frontline healthcare workers, elderly people around the globe were getting vaccinated before people were getting boosters. But in reality, that's not the question we're being asked. In reality, there is enough vaccine here in the United States for everyone to get boosters. If we're not using those vaccines, they will not be shipped around the globe. We need to do more to ensure manufacturing of vaccines globally. And one of the things that we're also seeing is vaccine manufacturers starting to look and say, okay, assuming the Omicron variant is a problem, let's already work to produce a vaccine against that strain. The newer technologies, these mRNA technologies are such that very quickly vaccine manufacturers are going to be able to do that. And if this is a strain that is causing problems, you want to make sure that those next round of vaccines get to people around the globe and aren't cornered just by wealthy nations.
And I'd like to ask you about the travel bans as well. It would seem the state-of-the-art sequencing South Africa may help the world get out in front of this variant. But are you worried at all about rushing to exclude countries that creates an environment where governments like South Africa might feel less forthright about the strains of the virus that they may find in the future if they know they will immediately be put on do not travel lists?
Well, I hope that this is really a short-term action to allow countries to gear up, understand a little bit more about the strain, and then relax those barriers. Because, we've talked about this before, Lindsay. Viruses do not respect borders. This has already been seen in more than a dozen countries around the globe. It will come to the United States, whether there's a travel ban on or not. And you don't want to impact global trade. You don't want to do anything that's going to impact the economies around the globe unless there's an overriding health value in doing so. And clearly, we've seen from travel bans, they are very ineffective, except in a very short time to be able to put in place some measures for immediate control.
At some point, do you feel that we should all just come to terms with the fact that this will be there won't be, I guess, an end to this pandemic, and instead COVID will become an endemic, something that we have to deal with for years, if not decades, but if vaccinated, not something that we have to be scared of?
You know, I'm not willing to say that we are going to accept as the norm going forward 1,000 people dying a day from a vaccine preventable infection, 80, 90,000 people getting infected every day. I do believe that COVID will be endemic, that it is something we come to live with. But we should not accept that it's something we live with this high a toll, especially since it's preventable. We need to do everything possible to convince our friends, our family, our neighbors, to learn more, to get comfortable and get vaccinated. It's in their own self-interest, and it's also in the interests of those around them who may not get full protection from being vaccinated.
Dr. Richard Besser, we thank you as always for your time and insight.
Thanks so much, Lindsay.
We turn now to the sex trafficking trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, now underway in federal court here in New York City. She was a friend and close associate of Jeffrey Epstein, who now stands accused of recruiting and grooming underage girls. Here's ABC's Ariel Reshef.
Tonight, more than a year after her high-profile arrest, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend and longtime confidant, on trial for alleged sex trafficking. The 6-count federal indictment accusing the socialite of recruiting and grooming underage girls for sex with a disgraced financier and convicted sex offender between 1994 and 2004. Today, the 59-year-old Maxwell seated in the federal courtroom with her defense team, cameras not allowed. Prosecutors alleging Maxwell served up a 14-year-old victim to be abused by Epstein, claiming she knew what was going to happen to these girls. There were times when she was in the room when it happened. Epstein died by suicide in August 2019 as he waited in jail on sex trafficking charges. Since then, investigators have zeroed in on Maxwell. But her defense team arguing that Jeffrey Epstein manipulated the world around him and the people around him, including Ghislaine, and describing her as a scapegoat for his actions, a sentiment echoed by Maxwell's family.
The authorities lost Epstein on their watch in federal custody, theoretically under 24/7 guard. And they're taking it out on my sister. And that's just damn wrong.
3 alleged victims who were minors at the time are expected to testify against Maxwell, including Annie Farmer. Farmer, the only alleged minor victim in the case to publicly identify herself, adamant that Maxwell was complicit in Epstein's abuse.
Looking back at this series of events now, it's just so clear how Maxwell was a really important part of the grooming process, and they worked together as a team.
Ariel Reshef joins us now. Ariel, tell us about the testimony today that we heard from Epstein's pilot.
Right. So, Lindsay, today Epstein's pilot testified that Ghislaine Maxwell was essentially Epstein's assistant and that the two seemed like a couple. But, of course, everyone is waiting to hear the testimony of Maxwell's accusers. Lindsay.
And, Ariel, what do we know so far about the jurors in this trial?
Well, it is a pretty diverse jury. We know that there are 5 men, 7 women, that there are 5 jurors who are white and 7 of color. And of course, Maxwell's fate is now in their hands. This trial expected to take about 6 weeks. She has pleaded not guilty to all 6 counts. Lindsay.
Ariel Reshef, our thanks to you. Next tonight, the New York Attorney General has released a flood of evidence from the investigation into alleged sexual harassment by former Governor Andrew Cuomo, including video of his 11-hour testimony and that of 6 women who alleged he harassed them. ABC's Trevor Ault has the details.
For the first time, you are watching video testimony of former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Have you ever had an inappropriate relationships with women on your staff?
Inappropriate, I assume, means a sexual relationship with women on my staff? The answer is no.
Today, the New York Attorney General releasing nearly 9 hours of video testimony over 11 hours of questioning, recorded in July as part of their investigation, which found Cuomo sexually harassed 11 women, leading to his resignation. Along with Cuomo's testimony, the AG's office also releasing a trove of documents and video testimony from 6 accusers, including former aides Lindsey Boylan, Charlotte Bennett, and Brittany Commisso.
And so you have hugged Ms. Commisso?
I have hugged her, and she has initiated many of the hugs.
But in her interview recorded in May, Commisso claims those hugs made her uncomfortable, and one went a step too far.
I remember his hand just sliding right up my blouse. And I remember looking down, and I remember seeing his hand, which is, I would say, it's a large hand, and over my bra.
The Attorney General's report said they found Cuomo's denials to lack credibility and to be inconsistent with the weight of the evidence obtained during our investigation. And the former governor is now facing a charge of misdemeanor forcible touching stemming from that alleged incident with Commisso. Cuomo says that interaction never happened and has repeatedly denied all claims of sexual misconduct, but he did publicly apologize to the 11 women who have accused him.
This is not to say that there are not 11 women who I truly offended. There are. And for that, I deeply, deeply apologize.
He does say he is sorry. Trevor Ault joins us now. Trevor, how is the former governor responding to today's release?
Well, Lindsay, we've been hearing from the former governor's attorneys who have been quite critical of this release. They're accusing the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, of acting politically. She, of course, herself is now running for governor, and they say this was a manipulated release of testimony with selective editing and selective redactions, though it was 9 hours of 11 hours of questioning, and most of the edits were when people asked for breaks. And Lindsay, also, former Governor Cuomo is still scheduled to be arraigned on that misdemeanor charge, though the Albany district attorney says that they are still evaluating that charge. Lindsay?
Trevor, thanks so much. Now to Cyber Monday. U.S. retailers are expecting to ring up more than $10 billion in sales. If you happen to still be on the computer, you're still shopping right now, there are deals to be had. Here's ABC's chief business and economics correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis.
The Thanksgiving leftovers may be gone, but the deals continue tonight.
This may be sort of a last chance for some people to get exactly what they want and when they want it. With supply chain issues,
major retailers rolling out Cyber Monday discounts on everything from electronics to toys to housewares. At Best Buy, get $150 off this 70-inch Samsung 4K smart TV. At Target, Apple products on sale like these AirPods Pro, now $60 off. Plus, score 50% off toys like this Coco Melon bathtub set. And at Kohl's, take an extra 20% off already reduced prices on everything from cookware to clothes. Plus, get $15 Kohl's cash for every $50 you spend. Cyber Monday expected to be the biggest online shopping day of the year, with families spending up to $11.3 billion. But Black Friday sales fell short of expectations. Experts say because retailers wary of the pandemic and supply chain issues started promotions earlier this year.
retailers were basically trying to spread out holiday sales across the entire autumn. So they were really encouraging people to start buying.
Our thanks to Rebecca Jarvis. And when we come back, the urgent manhunt after a university student is killed while unloading his car post-Thanksgiving break. He was just 2 weeks away from graduating. Our conversation with a man who climbed the world's tallest mountains. What drove him to pursue this most daring of goals? But up next, the warehouse turned nightmare. Thousands inside desperate to start new lives in a new country, but many now preoccupied by fears of a COVID explosion taking hold.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show. Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
This is American history, a violent white mob, a brutal attack, 300 black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's buried truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Sex, gambling, fraud, betrayal, and murder. Cutthroat Inc., the podcast. A family on a mission to find their son. A year's worth of conversations with the killer. Cutthroat Inc. Subscribe for free now on your favorite podcast app. Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. Now with so much on the line, more Americans are turning to David Muir and ABC's World News Tonight than any other program across all of television.
This is an image of something that could have been so much worse. Police in Utah say a semi-truck lost a wheel and it flew into the pickup truck on the opposite side of the highway, but fortunately the driver ducked and was uninjured. Police did give him kudos for not driving distracted and paying attention to the road ahead of him, adding it may have just saved his life. And next to the story that we've been tracking for weeks here on Prime. You may remember we first reported on the migrants seeking a better life stuck in limbo and forest between Belarus, Poland, and Lithuania. Some say they are the victims of a vengeful authoritarian leader. In recent days, there were some signs of hope after shelter was provided for hundreds. But as our Patrick Reevil reports, the desperation is only growing worse.
This is a place normally meant for packages, not people. But this warehouse in Belarus is now home for around 2,000 people. Families, young children, living just on the floor. These people, mostly from Iraqi Kurdistan, are trapped here about a mile from Belarus's border with Poland.
So this is where people are living, and it's a packing warehouse. You can see people are just living in the spaces where normally you would store goods. And there's about 1,700 people in here. And clearly it's not a place where people are meant to be living. You know, they've been here for over a week already, and it's just getting dirtier and dirtier. And the conditions are basically just getting worse and worse. So this is where you're living right now?
Yeah, with my mom. And my dad and my brother sleeping here, in the ground.
People are gonna freeze if the countries don't do something.
For months, Belarus's authoritarian leader, Alexander Lukashenko, has been accused of luring thousands of migrants to the border with Europe, orchestrating a crisis to retaliate against the European Union for its support for Belarus's pro-democracy movement. But blocked by Poland, migrants have been stranded in the forests along the border without food or shelter. The crisis escalated 3 weeks ago, attracting global attention when Belarus marched hundreds of migrants to the border, triggering violent clashes with Polish police. After the clashes, Belarus moved 2,000 of the migrants to the warehouse. It was seen as a hopeful sign that the crisis might be easing. But the warehouse isn't set up for hundreds of people. Narin and her husband Karwan now live in this tent with their 7-year-old son.
Every people are tired. We don't have any rest, food. All people in here, all of them sick.
They spent over 2 weeks in the forest before being brought here. Karwan says these bruises on his face are from a beating by Polish border guards. Belarus is feeding people, giving them porridge each day, and now winter boots. Many are sick, and it's feared COVID is running through the camp.
I am sick to go to hospital.
You're sick?
Yes.
What's wrong? Do you know? Bad lung. Your lungs. You have pneumonia?
Yes, I am cook.
Lukashenko this weekend visited the migrants. He told them he would help them get to Europe and demanded Germany and Poland let them through.
The majority here want to reunite with their families, find those close to them in Germany. Please take these people.
Belarusian officials tell the migrants Germany will soon take them, but there's no sign that that is true.
This is where these clashes between the migrants and Polish police were taking place. And you can see that there's still this very heavy security presence on the Polish side of the border. even though the migrants have mostly been moved back, you can see that there's this water cannon parked here and really a very heavy security presence still.
Several thousand migrants are still believed to be in Belarus. Poland accuses Belarusian guards of still trying to push dozens of people across the border each night. Today, Belarus's authorities said another migrant was found dead at the border. EU efforts to cut off the flow of migrants by pressuring airlines to stop flying them to Belarus do appear to be having an effect. The number of arrivals has sharply dropped. Iraq has also been flying home hundreds of its citizens voluntarily, saying 1,500 have left so far. Balsam Halaf was one of them. He said he decided to return after 5 months, during which he says Belarusian border guards robbed and beat him.
They assault you, taking all the money that's on you, even your watch, or whatever that has value that you have. They even break your phone.
But most in the camp told us they still hope to get to Europe, saying they will never go back.
Never ever, never ever.
Never ever.
Never ever.
That will mean more days in misery here, and with no idea when it might end. Patrick Revel, Bruski, Belarus, for ABC News.
Just troubling circumstances there are. Thanks to Patrick for that. Still ahead here on Prime. Tiger Woods breaking his silence, what he is calling an unfortunate reality. The tributes keep pouring in for trailblazing designer Virgil Abloh. And it's Cyber Monday, but how are small businesses faring? We take a look by the numbers, but first our tweet of the day from the now former CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcast.
World News Now.
And America This Morning.
The best new video.
The breaking news overnight.
Emergency crews called to the town of Surfside.
U.S. airstrikes hitting targets in Iraq and Syria.
The stories people are talking about.
You don't want to shave your legs? Don't. I was going to say,
oh my. Got it.
And what to expect in the day ahead.
ABC World News Now and America This Morning.
Starting at 2 a.m. Eastern.
Up all night to keep you up to date.
Right now, with so much at stake, Sunday mornings, this is the place. Taking on all the tough questions, straightforward reporting, no spin, no hype, no bull. See why Sunday mornings, more and more Americans are now turning first to ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos.
Welcome to This Week.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, it's still Cyber Monday, following, of course, Black Friday and Small Business Saturday. So we take a look at the retail economy by the numbers. First off, why it matters, because consumer spending is roughly 70% of the entire U.S. economy, and right now it is make or break for many businesses, particularly small companies, which collectively employ about 50% of all private sector U.S. workers. Upwards of $11 billion. That's how much U.S. consumers are expected to spend today alone, the biggest online shopping day of the year, according to Adobe. And $8.9 billion was the spending on Black Friday, slightly down from the previous year. Despite the push to shop at small businesses on Saturday, the smaller retailers saw 11% less revenue growth over October compared to large retailers over the weekend. While a majority, 55% of small business owners believe that the health of their business is good, they are growing more cautious and concerned. 73% of small business owners say inflation has had a significant impact on their business in the past year, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And 61% say it's been difficult to manage supply chain disruptions, a problem that's hitting small businesses especially hard. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime tonight. Our George Stephanopoulos with one of the all-time legends of comedy, Mel Brooks, who reveals some things that you may never have known about a few of his masterpieces. And remembering one of the heroes of his sport, Lee Elder, the first black golfer to ever play at the Masters. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
It's an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcast.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you. All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
More than 50 nations, including the U.S., issuing travel restrictions to slow the spread of a new COVID variant.
Biden crediting health experts in South Africa for identifying the new variant quickly.
This kind of transparency is to be encouraged and applauded because it increases our ability to respond quickly to any new threats.
Some of those countries protesting the travel restrictions and saying the world should focus on getting more vaccines to Africa, where under 7% of the population is vaccinated.
While we have that travel restrictions can slow the speed of Omicron, it cannot prevent it. We have more tools today to fight the variant than we've ever had before.
Congress is hurtling toward a major deadline this Friday, which will force them to fund the federal government or allow a potentially damaging shutdown. But House Democrats today say they're working on a temporary solution to keep that from happening.
House Democrats could introduce a temporary measure as early as Tuesday to keep the federal government running at least through mid-January. The stopgap measure would keep government funding at current levels and buy Congress some time as they juggle several deadlines, including one in mid-December to raise the debt ceiling or default on the nation's bills. As for the government funding plan, federal agencies are expected to run out of cash by midnight on Friday. House lawmakers could vote on the temporary funding measure as soon as Wednesday and send it over to the Senate.
Actor Jussie Smollett's criminal trial began today. Prosecutors say Smallett told police in January 2019 that two masked men attacked him in downtown Chicago. Investigators later concluded he staged the attack. Investigators charged Smallett with disorderly conduct. He pleaded not guilty. The trial expected to last at least a week.
A college senior killed this weekend in the city of brotherly love.
Philadelphia police say Temple University student Samuel Collington had parked his mother's SUV on a street near campus, returning from Thanksgiving break. He was unloading his car Sunday when someone attempted to rob him. During a struggle, the 21-year-old was shot twice in the chest and died. Temple University said this is a tragedy in every sense of the word.
It's absolutely insane. I think it's pretty crazy how unsafe it is around campus.
Over the weekend, the city of Philadelphia eclipsed 500 homicides for the year. That's the most in its history.
Golf legend Lee Elder, who broke down racial barriers in the sport, has died. Elder made history back in 1975 as the first African-American to compete at the Masters, paving the way for golf greats Tiger Woods and several others to follow. He made 448 starts on the PGA Tour, winning 4 times, but receiving countless death threats along the way. No cause of death has been revealed yet, but Elder had been in poor health. He wore an oxygen tube beneath his nose when he was honored this past April at Augusta National. Lee Elder was 87 years old.
He was the first. He was the one that I looked up to. Because of what he did, I was able to play here.
Michael Strahan.
For 15 seasons, Michael Strahan put fear in the hearts of quarterbacks across the NFL.
Michael Strahan gets the record.
And now his famed number 92 will never be worn again by a New York Giant, retired from circulation.
I am so grateful to have my family here because without them, I am not here. My father is here in spirit, and my mom is here. Thank you, Mom, for giving birth to me, for encouraging me, and for being the toughest person in my life.
For Michael, this moment was also about his teammates.
You don't do anything alone. Everything's not always about you, and teamwork makes the dream work.
It was about defying the odds.
You know what we did when we won that Super Bowl in 2007, right? They didn't give us a chance, did they?
And never giving up.
What did we do? We stopped you all!
Strahan still agile as ever, switching gears now ahead of his press conference and suffering a devastating leg injury during a car crash. Tiger Woods is now breaking his silence about a possible comeback, but also the limitations his body now faces. Victor Kendo has more.
In his first in-depth interview since that devastating car crash in February, Tiger Woods telling Golf Digest he feared he would lose his leg.
There was a point in time when he was, I wouldn't say 50-50, but it was damn near there, but I was going to walk out of that hospital with one leg.
Woods suffered open fractures to both bones in his lower right leg after losing control of his vehicle outside LA on February 23rd. He spent 3 weeks in the hospital. Woods telling Golf Digest his greatest motivation to recover, his son Charlie. The two embracing after he won his 5th Masters in 2019. Last week, hopes for a comeback after he posted this video hitting a shot on the driving range. He's come back from devastating injury before, but this time, he says his days of being a full-time tournament golfer are over.
I think something that is realistic is playing the tour one day, never full-time ever again. Pick and choose is an unfortunate reality, but it's my reality. And I understand it and I accept it.
And we expect to hear from Tiger again tomorrow. He'll be hosting a tournament at a course in the Bahamas. Lindsay?
Victor, thank you. The tributes keep pouring in for trailblazing designer Virgil Abloh, the artistic director for Louis Vuitton and founder of his own brand Off-White, died following a private 2-year battle with a rare form of cancer affecting his heart. Friends remembered him as a visionary and an inspiration, breaking barriers and becoming a leader in the fashion industry. Virgil Abloh was 41. Now to the legendary Mel Brooks. He's going strong at 95, and his new memoir, All About Me, My Remarkable Life in Show Business, tells all the stories behind the classics like The Producers, Blazing Saddles, and Young Frankenstein. ABC's George Stephanopoulos sat down with the Hollywood icon at his home in Santa Monica.
This marker?
Ow! Just to scare you, lady.
You still got it. It's good to be the king. With his ageless humor and sharp comedic insights.
The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 15.
This master storyteller has definitely still got it.
10 commandments.
In his new memoir, All About Me, My Remarkable Life in Show Business.
May the Schwartz be with you.
Mel Brooks takes readers on the journey of a lifetime.
It's packed with every adventure in your life. I was most struck by some of the scenes, though, from the very beginning of your life. This image of your mom when you're a little boy heating your clothes on the radiator in the winter.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that, because that was so fabulous for me. In the winter, being 5 years old, getting out of a warm bed was impossible. So she figured out, she put my clothes on the radiator, she dressed me under the covers, and I popped out of bed, ready to go to kindergarten, warm, toasty warm.
Were you funny in kindergarten?
I was. I was a show-off ever since I can remember. I remember I once sang, "You must have been a beautiful baby." I was just a little kid, and I was singing it in class, and my teacher heard me. "Must have been a wonderful child when you were only starting to go to kindergarten. Oh, you must have been a beautiful baby, 'cause baby, look at you now." And I was taken all over the school to sing "You Must Have Been a Beautiful Baby."
You write in the book that you think it had something to do with the fact that you're short, the fact that you're so funny?
Being short meant that you could be picked on by other kids on the street. But if you had a couple of people who loved you because you made them laugh, and they were big and they were strong, you had your army, you know.
You started out as a drummer?
That's how I became Brooks. I started out as a drummer, and I decided to use my mother's maiden name. My mother's maiden name was Brookman. I said, that's a better name than Kaminsky, my father's name. Brookman. And I was going to put it on the bass drum, sorry. B-R-O-O-K. No more room. So I just threw an S in, and I was 14, and it was Mel Brooks, and I've been Mel Brooks ever since I painted that.
Brooks began his career in television as a writer in 1950 on Sid Caesar's variety series, Your Show of Shows.
Guess you can't even get a glass of water in a place like this. Water!
Was he your big break?
He was my incredible golden door, my entry into show business at large.
You know, you say you became a writer when you were on Your Show of Shows, but we have this is a notebook here, Corporal Melvin Kaminsky.
You got my army.
Yeah, your army notebook, and you were writing back then.
I was writing back then, yeah. I wrote, on the way over, we went over in February the beginning of 1945, on a troop ship. There was a ship's newspaper, and I wrote a column called My Floating Day, a takeoff on Eleanor Roosevelt, who had a column. Her column was called My Day, and she would talk about what was happening. I wrote about crap games and smells.
I wonder if your time in the service, is that the root of your fascination with Adolf Hitler?
Maybe. I don't know. It was fearful. That's a good word. You know, carrying a rifle, wearing a helmet, and worried about shells bursting and whatever. But I felt World War II somehow, first of all, they attacked us, and we had no choice. But we were fighting for something good. We were fighting to preserve something wonderful, America.
The original title of The Producers, Springtime for Hitler.
That was the original title. Couldn't have a better title, except Joseph E. Levine said a lot of the exhibitors are Jewish, and they've called me and said they're simply not going to put Hitler on the marquee. You got to come up with another title.
How can a producer make more money with a flop than he could with a hit?
Well, it's simply a matter of creative accounting. Let's assume, just for the moment, that you are a dishonest man.
Assume away.
Where did that idea come from, a hit that's made out of a flop?
I worked for a guy, there were many producers that kind of hedged their bets. If a play cost $10,000 to produce, he would raise $11,000. And their only problem was they had to be careful. If they raised too much, then they couldn't, if it was a hit, they couldn't pay all the backers.
The Producers was the first movie Brooks directed. It won him an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay in 1969. Over 30 years later, he created The Producers Broadway musical, which won 12 Tony Awards, and still holds the record for most Tonys received by a single production.
You have a great line in the book about failure. You say it's like corned beef hash. It takes a long time to eat, a long time to digest, but it sticks with you.
Yeah.
But what have you failed at?
I've plenty. You never saw me in the mountains leaving the stage amid a chorus of boos. When I was doing bad jokes, when I had not yet found my way, which was reality was my way. Tell the truth.
And happens to be very funny at doing it as well. Our thanks to George for that. Finally tonight, to one of the most breathtaking feats in mountaineering history. There are only 14 peaks in the world higher than 8,000 meters, including Mount Everest and K2. In 2019, NIMS project conquered them all and shattered the record by doing so in less than 7 months. NIMS' journey was captured in a new Netflix documentary, 14 Peaks, Nothing is Impossible, which is streaming now. We sat down with NIMS and the director, Torquil Jones, to discuss the mission and capturing it all on film. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. NIMS, I'd like to start with you. In the past, it had been 7 years it had taken for people to ascend the 14 highest peaks. You decide, I'm going to do it in 7 months. Where did you come up with that idea?
To be honest, I had never even imagined myself until 2017. I was on Everest as one of the lead instructor for the Gurkhas to take onto the summit. So what happened that season was I managed to climb Everest, Lhotse, and Makalu, which is the world's first, fourth, and the fifth highest mountain. And I did that in 5 days with stopping for 2 full-on day and night drinking. So at that point, I realized, okay, maybe I could do something bigger. And that was the igniter of the whole idea.
And at one point you say, we drink tonight and we plan tomorrow. How much planning goes into all this?
Okay, just to put things into perspective, a climber, I'm not gonna name it, he has tried to climb 14 times on one 8,000 meter peak, and he hasn't still been able to do it. It's a mammoth task, and you need to plan everything in details. You need to look at the conditions of the team members. You also need to look at the condition of the route, the weather, and everything. So yeah, of course, as you said, it takes a lot.
And Torquil, how did you get into this?
So NIMS and his team had filmed during Project Possible, and then I met NIMS shortly afterwards, and we kind of hit it off and started to talk about what he'd done and the fact that he'd filmed the climbing scenes for the Project Possible. They were not only filming these epic cinematic kind of shots from Nepal, Pakistan and China, but really even during the worst possible moments, during storms, during rescue missions, they were still filming, and they were filming right up into the summits when for most climbers, they can't take their gloves out of their hands. So I came on board after NIMS had finished, and then we kind of were very aligned in what kind of story we wanted to tell, which was this was much bigger than a mountaineering film. We wanted to tell a really thrilling, action-packed story, but one that had real emotional depth.
And Torquil, what message would you like for viewers to take away from 14 Peaks?
When I first got involved in the project, it wasn't because I was interested in mountaineering. It was really because there was, for me, Nim's story was much bigger than the 14 Peaks. It was about that idea that this guy has battled against the odds. He's battled against what people said was impossible, and he's achieved it through, an incredible physicality, extreme mental toughness. But above all, I think Nims has this kind of limitless imagination that means that it is an inspiring story.
You went up Mount Everest, right? And then you did 2 more peaks all in 48 hours. A lot of times people need to regroup in between, reaching the summit. How were you able to push the limits like that?
Of course, I have a bit of, different physicality, but no different to any people who lives on high altitude, even though I grew up in the most flat part of Nepal. But the thing is, what I believe in everything in life is, if your goal is bigger than you, and if your goal is bigger than your selfishness, if your goal is bigger than, maybe commercially, the money, name, or fame, you always get that, massive energy.
What do you want people to know about Sherpas, who, as you say, are often overlooked, and Nepalese climbers in general?
Well, we are the king of 1,000ers. We dominate that thing, and people have been taking that credibility, that name away from us. I think, backed up by this project, I hope everything will do the justice.
Your mother was also ill during the mission. How did that impact you while you were climbing?
A lot, because I was very close to my mom. I was the biggest financial contributor to my family, because I was in Special Forces. I was sending money to my mom and dad every month, to my brothers and to my wife and all. When I decided to resign from the Special Forces, it's not only me who suffer, it's my whole family. But what I said to them was, look, what we go through as a pain, as a family, is nothing to what the outcome of this project will be. So many kids, so many people around the world are going to get inspired by this project.
The picture of that traffic jam that's now become so popular. Describe for me what was happening in that moment, because I think many people didn't have the idea that there are so many people up at the same time, so close to each other.
I never get to tell this story about that picture. And I think all the media, all the news, everybody send the wrong message. Nowadays, we are so negative that people are telling somebody else, lowering themselves, oh, now Everest is touristy. Even though you climb Everest, everybody is doing that. That's completely wrong, okay? And why? Because look, everybody who's not climbing Everest, everybody who's doing that is not trying to be next Nims or trying to be next, top one in that league. For example, so many people run marathon. Are they trying to be Mo Farah? Are they trying to be number 1 in the world? Not necessarily. People do this adventure. People run marathon to improve, from that experience, what they do from adventure, they want to take in their life and wanna move forward. The second thing was, yes, it was only 2 days in that season, and everybody who's going through the adventure wanted to pick that best weather. So every day on Everest is not like that. Please, let's clear that message away. It's still 9,000 meters. It's still tough. And those people who wants to take away from adventure, we shouldn't be lowering them. So let's be positive, guys.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And all the best with 14 Peaks.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
And before we go tonight, our image of the day, courtesy of the White House. Take a look at the Christmas decorations now on display. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden revealing this year's theme is called Gifts from the Heart. There are 41 trees throughout the White House. The official gingerbread pays tribute to frontline workers and weighs more than 300 pounds. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you so much for streaming with us. The next hour, Elizabeth Holmes breaking down on the stand during an emotional day of testimony for the former Silicon Valley wonder, and our conversation with Daniel Day Kim and his new Nat Geo series.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All
right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new Hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
The ladies you love, the hottest topics happening now. There's only one place to find it all.
You guys are having the hard conversations. I love The View.
The most watched #1 daytime talk show is The View. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Let's do this. When you wake up in the morning, when you wake up in the morning, darling, I'll be by your side.
More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. Prosecutors outside of Philadelphia have asked the Supreme Court to reinstate Bill Cosby's sexual assault conviction. They claim the verdict was thrown out over a questionable agreement that the comic claimed gave him lifetime immunity, but they say it creates a dangerous precedent of giving a press release the same legal weight as an immunity agreement. Cosby's lawyers long argued that he relied on a promise that he would never be charged when he gave damaging testimony during an accuser's civil suit. His words were later used against him in 2 criminal trials. Honduran presidential candidate Xiomara Castro at this time appears headed for victory 12 years after her husband was ousted in a coup. The election, which appeared to run smoothly, could get that country its first female president in a nation where the feds currently say the president has ties to drug money. And the Federal Trade Commission is now investigating supply chain disruptions. They have ordered Walmart, Amazon, and other big companies to provide information about just what's causing the bottlenecks and why prices for certain items are soaring. And we are tracking the spread of the new COVID variant Omicron, reported in Africa just on Friday and now confirmed in at least 17 countries, including Canada. President Biden said today Omicron is a cause for concern, not a cause for panic, while defending new travel restrictions from 8 African countries as necessary to slow the spread and give the U.S. time to prepare and for more Americans to get vaccinated. So how concerning could this new variant be, and will vaccines hold up against it? Here's ABC's Stephanie Ramos.
Just hours after the World Health Organization warned the global risks from the Omicron variant are very high, President Biden with Dr. Anthony Fauci at the White House, aiming to reassure the American people and to urge them to get vaccinated and get the booster.
This variant is a cause for concern, not a cause for panic.
Scientists are now racing to learn whether the Omicron variant, with its 50 mutations, is more transmissible than the Delta variant, whether it can make people sicker, and whether our vaccines and booster shots will prevent severe illness. The Omicron variant was first identified in Botswana and is spreading rapidly in South Africa. About 200 cases have been confirmed in at least 17 countries, including 2 cases in Canada. Dr. Fauci suggesting the variant could already be here danger, something the president acknowledged today.
Sooner or later, we're going to see cases of this new variant here in the United States.
Dr. Fauci says he expected our vaccines and the boosters to be effective in knocking down the severity of this new variant, though he cautioned it's still early.
We don't know exactly what's going on with this variant, but I would assume, and I think it's a reasonable assumption, that when you get vaccinated and boosted and your level goes way up, you're going to have some degree of protection, at least against severe disease.
This morning, the final flight from Johannesburg, South Africa, touching down in Newark, ahead of the new U.S. ban on foreign travelers from 8 South African countries.
I think it's better to be safer than sorry, to restrict the travel until we know for sure.
Tonight, Portugal confirming 13 cases of the Omicron strain in one soccer team after one player traveled to South Africa. The Kennedy family from North Carolina were on a safari in South Africa. They're now making their way home, but the ban does not affect U.S. citizens.
I understand that there's a more global and bigger picture than my little nuclear family. But I'd like to get home, quarantine at home.
Genomic sequencing labs are now racing to find cases of Omicron here in the U.S. The president says all 3 vaccine makers are preparing to update their vaccines if needed.
In the event, hopefully unlikely, that updated vaccinations or boosters are needed to respond to this new variant, we will accelerate their development and deployment with every available tool.
Moderna telling us it would take a couple of months.
We'll know from laboratory tests in the next couple of weeks just how effective the vaccines are against this variant.
The potential threat from Omicron comes as the U.S. is already seeing a spike with the colder weather and now the busiest travel weekend of the pandemic. Hospital admissions have climbed more than 20% since the beginning of the month.
Our isolation unit for people with COVID-19 here in the hospital every day gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We're adding more and more rooms. So we're going the wrong way with the variant we know now.
Facing a spike in COVID cases already, New York's Governor Kathy Hochul declaring a state of emergency to make sure the state and New York City are ready for any impact from the new variant. And the governor ordering all nursing homes to make booster shots available.
We have to deal in the realities of a highly transmissible, we believe, variant.
President Biden urging Americans to wear masks indoors when out in public again to keep yourself safe and those around you. Tonight, New York City doing the same.
Our thanks to Stephanie. And for more now, let's bring in Dr. John Brownstein, an epidemiologist at Boston Children's Hospital. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us. First, just break this down for us. What do we know about this variant and what do we not know just yet?
Yeah, good evening, Lindsay. I think we have to remember we know far less than we actually know about this variant. Unfortunately, it is very early days, and so we have to be very careful in not necessarily, pressing the full alarm button when it comes to this variant. We're looking at transmissibility, whether this Omicron variant is more transmissible than Delta. Likely it potentially is because we've seen this rapid increase in South Africa, but it's still early days. Also on severity, there were initial signs that hospitalizations were going up, but then we saw anecdotal reports of mild illness. More studies need to be done to fully understand whether this variant is more severe. And then finally, looking at whether these vaccines will hold up well. We fully expect that we will have some protection against Omicron from the vaccines, but we just don't know the full extent. We know that there's a number of mutations on the spike protein that make it concerning, but we just have to wait and see. There's just a lot of open questions, and hopefully the science is going to play out over the coming days and weeks.
What's the most common question that you've gotten from some of your patients about this new variant?
I think the big question that I'm getting from everyone right now is, are we just starting over? Are we heading into lockdowns again? Are we back to square one? And I really believe that we will not be back to that March 2020 when we saw lockdowns. We have so much more now. We have therapeutics, we have testing, we've got a vaccine, and we of course have even natural immunity because this, other variants have spread through this country very quickly. So the vaccines may take a hit, but I don't think we're going to see the lockdowns that we've seen in the past. There is an urgency around vaccinations and boosters, and I think this should be a signal to many people that if you've not gotten your vaccine, get it. If you're eligible for a booster, probably now is the time.
In your estimation, until we have a complete picture of just how dangerous it may or may not be, what should Americans be doing at this point?
Well, it's nothing really, changes. It's just that Omicron raises the stakes. It's what we've already been doing: vaccinations, boosters, mask wearing, testing, ventilation. These are all the kinds of things that we've been doing all along. And of course, we have Delta and really a lot of transmission in the community already. So the addition of this new variant doesn't really change the equation as far as what we would want to do. Testing is really important right now. If you're sick or you've been exposed or you've been traveling, that will help us potentially identify Omicron in communities. I think likely it's already here in this country. Time will tell. We'll find out in the coming days. But people just have to, be sort of flexible. There is a potential that we will see another surge, and people just have to recognize that we may have to deal with additional restrictions. But I don't think we'll get to where we were before. And of course, people just need to follow the science, and things will be much clearer in the coming weeks.
Despite the variant, South Africa is still seeing far fewer cases than the U.S. is seeing per capita. Could this just have been a few super spreader events and South Africa's state-of-the-art sequencing catching it?
Well, I think a couple of things here. I think, yes, South Africa should be really praised for their amazing surveillance that they're doing. They have incredible capacity because they've done incredible work in HIV surveillance, and they're applying it here. And I think they should be praised. I think we created this false, correlation between good detection and incidence of this variant. We just don't fully know where this is around the world. We just happen to know that South Africa has really good surveillance. That being said, we are seeing increases in cases. It's the potential beginnings of a fourth wave in South Africa, so that is concerning. But if you look at the U.S., we are still in the middle of really significant transmission. So it's easy to look at other countries and see this increase, but we still have a lot of work to do to control this virus here, even in the U.S.
And lastly, same question to you that I put to Dr. Besser last hour. At this point, do we just need to be resigned to the fact that we will not end this pandemic, but instead it will become an endemic, something that we just have to learn to live with?
I think we absolutely have to recognize that we're never going to eradicate COVID. It's here to stay. But the question is, what are we going to do? We have these amazing vaccines. We can get enough of the population immunized so that it turns into an endemic disease without causing the sort of devastation of hospitalizations and deaths. And that's really what we're trying to avoid. We have 80 million eligible people in the U.S. That have yet to receive their first dose of this vaccine. And so it's either going to be through natural infection or through the vaccine. And I really hope we get to that endemic phase without the levels of deaths that we've seen in the past. So that's a big question on us right now. But yes, we're going to have to rewire our brains. COVID is unfortunately not going anywhere.
Dr. Brownstein, we thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We turn now to the sex trafficking trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, now underway in federal court here in New York City. She was, of course, the friend and close associate of Jeffrey Epstein, who now stands accused of recruiting and grooming underage girls. Here's ABC's Ariel Reshef.
Tonight, more than a year after her high-profile arrest, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend and longtime confidant, on trial for alleged sex trafficking. The 6-count federal indictment accusing the socialite of recruiting and grooming underage girls for sex with a disgraced financier and convicted sex offender between 1994 and 2004. Today, the 59-year-old Maxwell seated in the federal courtroom with her defense team, cameras not allowed. Prosecutors alleging Maxwell served up a 14-year-old victim to be abused by Epstein, claiming she knew what was going to happen to these girls. There were times when she was in the room when it happened. Epstein died by suicide in August 2019 as he waited in jail on sex trafficking charges. Since then, investigators have zeroed in on Maxwell. But her defense team arguing that Jeffrey Epstein manipulated the world around him and the people around him, including Ghislaine, and describing her as a scapegoat for his actions, a sentiment echoed by Maxwell's family.
The authorities lost Epstein on their watch in federal custody, theoretically under 24/7 guard. And they're taking it out on my sister. And that's just damn wrong.
3 alleged victims who were minors at the time are expected to testify against Maxwell, including Annie Farmer. Farmer, the only alleged minor victim in the case to publicly identify herself, adamant that Maxwell was complicit in Epstein's abuse.
Looking back at the series of events now, it's just so clear how Maxwell was a really important part of the grooming process, and they worked together as a team.
Ariel, thank you. Now to another trial making news tonight. Disgraced tech entrepreneur Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos, gave emotional and highly personal testimony on the stand today. We cannot bring cameras into the courtroom, but we have the next best thing. Our Rebecca Jarvis, host of the Dropout podcast. She joins us now with all the details. Thank you so much for that, Rebecca. Holmes told a crowded courtroom today that she was raped while at Stanford University. What details did she share, and what was the relevance to the case?
Well, Lindsay, this was explosive testimony and no testimony leading up until today. And we've been now seeing this trial for months unfold. No testimony even hinted at this news. But Elizabeth Holmes on the stand said that she was raped at Stanford and that it was the reason that she poured herself into building the company Theranos. And she told her attorney, Downey, that this is the reason. This was a very big reason that she went on to start her company Theranos, Lindsay.
Perhaps an attempt to humanize her there on the stand. And then there were those explosive claims about Sonny Belwani, the former Theranos executive, and her ex-boyfriend. Tell us more about that.
Well, first of all, he categorically has denied those claims, and we had a sense that they might be coming here at this trial. If you'll remember, just days before the trial began, there were these abuse claims filed by the defense suggesting that Elizabeth Holmes faced years of abuse by Sonny Belwani, everything from what she ate to how she dressed to how she spoke, and she detailed these claims, including personal notes that she wrote to herself at the time, personal text exchanges. You know, we've seen in this trial exchanges between Sonny Belwani and Elizabeth Holmes at this trial already about business affairs. We have not seen any of the personal exchanges that came out of court just moments ago, Lindsay.
And certainly some powerful words from Holmes there. And for some context, how does Belwani fit into this fraud case?
So if you think about this story, Elizabeth Holmes is the founder, and Sonny Belwani for many years was her boyfriend as well as the COO of her company. She brought him into the company a few years after it was begun. The two of them met when she was 18 years old and he was in his 30s while studying in China together. They got to know each other, and she told this story to the courtroom. It's something that her attorneys telegraphed to the courtroom earlier, that the two of them met while studying together. The jurors have now seen pictures of the two of them together. Elizabeth looking very young in a Stanford sweatshirt, standing next to Sonny Belwani, looking significantly older in his suit. And this is something that, with 20 years and many decades in prison on the line, her defense attorneys, according to all of the legal experts I've spoken to, are really doing everything in their power to humanize her and show the jury who this woman is. I will say, Lindsay, a very key factor here are the actual claims and counts against Elizabeth Holmes, that she defrauded investors, that she defrauded patients. And her attorney asked her point blank today, did Sonny Belwani make you make these statements to investors, make you make statements to Walgreens? She answered unequivocally no on all of those fronts, but also said she's just beginning to determine the influence that Sonny Belwani really had over her life, Lindsay.
Really an interesting dynamic there. And lastly, Rebecca, you've been following Elizabeth Holmes for years at this point. Were you surprised by this emotional testimony over such deeply personal matters?
Well, Lindsay, we've never seen this woman break a sweat, really, in public. And today on the stand, she fought back tears. We've seen her as the most put together individual, planning, it seems, preparing for everything that happens. This was a very, very different side of Elizabeth Holmes that the jurors saw today that we, up until this point, as the public, have never seen in covering her story.
Rebecca Jarvis, our thanks to you as always. And to stay on top of this trial, be sure to check out Season 2 of The Dropout, wherever you get your podcasts. And still to come, Rihanna and Prince Charles and the Caribbean changing of the guard.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people
squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yeah.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
what is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
This is American history. A violent white mob, a brutal attack, 300 black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's buried truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Sex, gambling, fraud, betrayal, and murder. Cutthroat Inc., the podcast. A family on a mission to find their son. A year's worth of conversations with the killer. Cutthroat Inc. Subscribe for free now on your favorite podcast app. Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. Now with so much on the line, more Americans are turning to David Muir and ABC's World News Tonight than any other program across all of television.
Welcome back. We're tracking several headlines from around the world. Oscar Pistorius may soon meet face-to-face with the parents of his girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp, who he killed. The South African runner has been in jail since 2013 and has served less than half of his sentence, but he's now eligible for parole. And before that happens, he needs to have a victim-offender dialogue. He was moved to a facility closer to the Steenkamps. Rihanna and Prince Charles were both on hand as Barbados became the first nation to say goodbye to the Queen and the Commonwealth in nearly 3 decades. The move gained momentum after the Black Lives Matter movement here in the U.S. and growing demands for reparations for slavery on the island. And signs of hope in the world's largest living structure. Scientists are giddy about the coral spawn that has happened over the past few days. They say it's a positive sign after devastating bleaching events impacted the reef. We now turn to one of the stars of National Geographic's limited series, The Hot Zone: Anthrax, which premiered last night and continues tonight and tomorrow on Nat Geo and also streaming on Hulu. The series, inspired by true events, depicts the plight and eventual triumph over the threat from the 2001 anthrax attacks 20 years ago, just weeks after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, when letters containing anthrax were sent to unsuspecting victims in D.C., New York, and Florida. Let's take a quick look.
Anthrax spores do not just die. They settle. They lie in wait. What we're talking about is a ticking time bomb. I saw it with my own eyes. Get out.
Daniel Day Kim, of course, well known for his roles in the television series Lost, Hawaii Five-0, and The Good Doctor. And he is good enough to join us here tonight to discuss his first leading role in the new series. Thank you so much for being here, Daniel.
It's such a pleasure.
Tell us about your character, Matthew Riker, an FBI agent with a specialty in microbiology. He is the vehicle that drives the investigation forward for the FBI, but he's not based on one specific person. How did you bring him to life, and what did you learn working with real FBI agents in order to prepare for this role?
Well, you actually put it better than I could. He's not representative of just one FBI agent. He is an amalgamation of hundreds of agents who worked on this case over, I think, 8 or 9 years. And so what was important for the sake of the show was to get the events, the primary events of the investigation portrayed, and use my role as a vehicle to kind of keep the plot moving forward. But, you know, in the end, he's still a human being. And so, you know, I did the research of trying to get in touch with some FBI agents, and a few of them were kind enough to talk to me about and share their experiences working during 9/11, and some of them were Asian American as well. So I got that perspective on their work.
And the series really does a great job of capturing the sense of panic and fear that people felt after 9/11. Your character is desperate to find the culprit of the anthrax attacks, but doesn't really process his own trauma from the terrorist attacks that had just taken place weeks before. What was it like harnessing that tension for this role?
It wasn't very difficult, to be honest, only because, you know, we've all lived through 9/11 and the trauma that it personally caused to each of us. And I remember exactly where I was. I remember the fear and the uncertainty that accompanied those times personally. And I was able to just kind of tap into those emotions and kind of amplify them for the character.
And why was it important to highlight the mental health struggles that your character experienced during the anthrax investigation?
Well, I think, you know, partially because it was out of respect and to honor those first responders who worked so hard, especially, you know, in the days and weeks directly following those attacks. You know, in my conversations, I learned that, you know, many of them did not sleep, not just for days, but weeks and months after the attacks, because they were pulling 12-hour shifts. And then after they were done, they were going down to ground zero in their off time, searching for survivors and helping those who were on duty. And so this was going on for a lengthy period of time after the attacks, and mental health, it becomes, and physical health were two major concerns of everyone involved.
9/11 seemed to really open up the doors to modern-age conspiracy theories. And recently, during the pandemic, we've seen an abundance of conspiracy theories circulate once again. Do you see any similarities at all between what we're experiencing now during the pandemic and those first few weeks following 9/11 20 years ago?
Absolutely. You know, it was interesting as we were shooting this series, you know, and listening to a lot of information and misinformation regarding vaccines and masks. And we were portraying a time that, you know, that was kind of the modern age of the conspiracy theory, you know, that 9/11 was an inside job, that the anthrax attacks were orchestrated by someone other than X or Y or Z. And it was the dawn of social media and the internet age. And so, you know, it was a harbinger of things to come.
Do you think that this series tells us anything about where we are as a country today as far as managing and responding to a crisis?
That's a great question. You know, what I do see is that we tend to follow a pattern if we're going to look at the anthrax attacks. You know, there's a time where we become very unified and we kind of band together as Americans and look for a culprit, and then there's a time where we can, you know, if history is any judge, rush to judgment, look to scapegoat, instead of maybe doing the hard, real work that's factually and scientifically based to find whatever solution we can. And so, you know, I hope that we can use history as a blueprint to do better in the future.
You've certainly been an outspoken advocate for more diversity in Hollywood and also in highlighting the attacks on Asian Americans during the pandemic. And you also tweeted when the series was first announced that after 31 years of working in television, this was your first series lead role. What did it mean to you, and in that battle for representation, to be cast as the face of the FBI for this series?
Well, you know, it meant a lot to me personally. I'll tell you that. You know, after working in the business for 31 years and starting from a point where I had like one line in a soap opera and moving up the ladder gradually, it's nice to be able to get to this spot in my career. And at the same time, I also acknowledge that no one is guaranteed this. There are plenty of actors more talented than I and who have been working longer than me that have never gotten the privilege of being a lead in a show. So, you know, the overwhelming attitude for me is gratitude.
And you, of course, have your own production company, 3AD, which has a commitment to diversity and supporting those who are underrepresented. And you've also had great success with The Good Doctor, which you helped bring to the air as an executive producer. So what improvements would you say that you have seen in getting more Asian American representation, both in front and behind the camera? And what more work still needs to be done?
Well, thank you for specifying Asian Americans, but I think really it is about all underrepresented groups. Asian Americans happens to be one of them, African Americans, and we can kind of talk at length about the number of groups that are underrepresented. But the point is, to me, that all of us are making strides collectively. If you look at the number of roles on TV and film for Asian Americans and other underrepresented groups, they are without question greater than they were 10 years ago. That's not to say that there isn't work to be done. I think the events of the past year and even the past couple of weeks show us that there is a distance to go yet. At the same time, I really believe that we need to take the wins where we can get them, and I do believe that we're trending in the right direction.
Daniel Day Kim, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you joining us tonight. Everyone, be sure to catch National Geographic's limited series, The Hot Zone Anthrax, tonight and tomorrow night on Nat Geo, as well as streaming on Hulu.
Thanks so much.
And finally tonight, the extra helping of gratitude found in America's hospitals this time of year.
Practically as traditional as the stuffing and cranberry sauce.
Come here, little turkey.
Each year, turkeys fill the NICU at Riverside Regional Medical Center in Newport News, Virginia.
Let's put your little turkey hat on. That is too cute.
From top to bottom, this is the dressing that accompanies each new life this time of year.
So cute.
Goodness. Even the boy and girl twins all decked out in matching gear for the holidays.
I love, love, love working with the babies and the moms and just getting to see them off to their new beginnings.
Make it a little more homey for them here. Make it special.
And in Atlanta,
Excited? Ready.
Tim Peterkin and Kathy Slack are grateful for an extra helping of kindness from their team at Emory University Hospital. Tim and Kathy are co-workers. Tim needed a kidney. Family and friends were not a match. Tim tried looking everywhere, including a request in the company newsletter. Turns out Kathy was a perfect match.
Things have been amazing. No more dialysis.
And they, too, have matching clothing. Only theirs reads, Kidney Buddies for Life. Tonight, Tim is thankful for a second chance.
And we are thankful to you for watching. That's our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.